We get to rest every day, but the loom of life never stops. The pattern that is weaving when we go to bed is the pattern that continues when we are waking in the morning, just like today. Another fantastic day on Weekend Deal. And we continue to talk about indiscriminate increase in house rent. Nigeria is our focus. What is happening at your end? Are you a tenant or a landlord? You need to be a part of our show today. My name is Thelma Obaze. Patience, how do you do?
I'm good. Thank you, Tama. You look great, by the way.
You too, darling.
Okay, so Weekend Deal is a gift that keeps giving and giving. And that's what we do here. We are here week in, week out, just to make sure that we discuss issues that pertain to our personal growth and the growth of our nation.
It's Weekend Deal. We're talking about the skyrocketing nature of rent in Nigeria. Many say it's happening nationwide. And like we always say, there are two sides to every story. We'll try to strike a balance even as we take off today. Uju presents our background feature.
My daughter deserves the best. I have told you. iPhone 17.
No,
If it's not iPhone 17, I'm not buying another phone.
iPhone 12.
Auntie, is this your daughter?
Hey,
Is this your daughter?
If it's iPhone, just keep
Auntie,
it
is it possible?
under the table. Okay?
I love this
Let me
business.
just
Let me see this your mother.
You know my friend.
It's okay. I'm hungry.
People are looking to you.
I'm hungry now. Go to the kitchen and bring
Just
my
tell me
food.
you
I will buy it.
When?
I will buy it.
When? I was his wife before you became a daughter.
Auntie, go and bring my food. Go and bring my food. I'm hungry. Wifey.
Hello.
Let's sit down there. Let's sit down. Hey.
But why are you taking
Someone's
food?
work today.
Let's not talk about it.
Let's talk
I
about
had
it.
to see the like
It couldn't be that bad.
price of everything. See, all the
My father.
it seems this guy don't know what's
Can somebody...
stopping in town. You don't know what's happening in town.
We have not paid our house rent.
Okay.
So
Daddy,
please.
someone can wait.
Eh?
My friends, they're not
Wait. Landlord. When is landlord coming, myself?
should not come in Jesus' name. Last week,
Please go answer the question.
so it should not come.
Madam landlord.
Mr. Audu
Madam
and
landlord.
family.
How are you doing now?
What
You're
is
looking
good
so
about the
beautiful.
afternoon? Hey, please spare me that.
The brides
Because
of
your
this world.
flattering does not work again with you. Are you hearing me? I said I've had enough of you people.
Please sit
What
down.
is good about this afternoon? You don't need to offer. I'm already seated here.
What do I do this?
Mr. Audu, I've given you 2 weeks.
Madam.
That was not enough.
Madam,
I
understand.
gave you 6 months.
Madam, understand.
Understand what? You and who?
The country is
You
hard.
look like when you join drinking tea.
Madam, see now, it's such a...
Please, what?
I need to go to
Madam,
please.
please.
You just have to understand my husband.
Madam.
Please.
No, please, I will eat. Please, out. I'm not hearing anything from anybody anymore.
Madam.
I say out.
Madam, don't do this.
I'm not involving
Please
anybody
don't do
else.
this.
I'm not involving anything like that.
Madam,
I came with my is. I'm going to inject you with the best. Michael!
Yeah.
Come here, Michael!
Madam, please.
You see, these people, whatever you can do.
Madam, please.
No, it's away.
Don't
I
listen.
done the tea.
Oh my God, madam.
Madam,
Wait.
big man, I want to rent my property. Get out of my
It is obvious that economic forces are driving rent prices up. All Nigerians are feeling the effect of the economy, whether the landlord, the tenant. Factors contributing to the surge in rent prices have no face.
One of the determinants of rent is have to do with the demand and supply. The demands on accommodation lately has really increased. We also have this issue of cost of construction. The essence of investment is for you to make profit. We found out that today, building material that you buy for maybe 1,000 naira, by the time you go back to the market, it's about 3,000 naira. And all these things will reflect on your total cost, which you also will have to also reflect on your rent.
You will see that you are in a 2-bedroom flat. Someone else has another 2-bedroom flat. You are paying like 1.5 million and the other person is paying 800,000. In the same block, no one is asking, why are you doing this and why is this? So this man who is renting for 1.5 million, it can just be that maybe the season his own house is open, everywhere is occupied. There are times that some landlords will say, oh, this is what I want for this building. We sit them down. Oga, sit down. You want this amount for this building. What and what and what have you really put there? You know, to be honest with you, you can do this amount instead of this amount you're asking. Because now, what if you say, okay, your rent is 1.5 million. The person manages to pay. And then by the second year, you have an issue. When there is a regulatory body set for that, no landlord will just sit down and decide any rate at whatever. At least, okay, if you're renting at so amount, what is the facility there that makes it that amount? Is it worth it? Those are some of the questions. The regulatory body coming in for rent in Nigeria is going to solve a whole lot of problem and reduce the risk of more men having high blood pressure. Because what rent costs in life in Nigeria, whatever the state, is a lot.
We Can Deal today takes a look at indiscriminate increase in rent.
Like that lady asked, Engineer Honorable Roby, what have you added to the house? Why are you increasing your rent? And why increasing your rent? Did you carry your tenant along, or you just decided to just up and increase your rent? Anyway, let's hear from the landlords. What is their own story? Do they have any reason why they do the things they do? NTA Port Harcourt is now joining the conversation.
The indiscriminate or routine increase in rent by landlords are not tied down in most cases to defined laws and regulations in the through Nigerian situation, as it remains the prerogative of landlords or house owners to increase rent at will, though certain factors may be responsible for this.
It's a thing that should be expected, that landed properties will get to appreciate within a period of time. That's a normal thing, but where it becomes very disturbing is when landlords get to even increase it on a yearly basis. So here's my thought. I'm not against the whole increase, but there should be a notice given prior to the time the rentage is being increased.
Landlords can just walk up to you now, to your house, and say, Madam, find me so and so amount. You are wondering whether you are owing him. You're not owing him. He's telling you to give him advance for next year's rent, right? And they can just increase it because they see that maybe they pass your house, they've smelled fried chicken today, like you have eaten fried chicken this afternoon. Tomorrow they come and see where somebody bought 1 bag of rice. Your rent will just increase.
It's depending on the area in Port Harcourt you're staying. The house rent in Job is actually different from the house rent in the Obuna Valley, GRA, and all of that. Basically, maybe it's because of the calibers of persons staying in that area. The increment sometimes is just based on the location.
The Port Harcourt scenario finds tenants faced with certain tenancy commitments, such as the unrefundable drinking money, security levies, damages deposit, agency fee, legal fee, even when in most cases there are not legal formalities.
I think it's just other avenues of landlords trying to extort someone from, their tenants.
My landlord does not request for drink money. He only asks you to pay for the agreement fee because that's very demanding to define the terms and conditions that you live in the yard.
The relationship between a landlord and the tenant is supposed to be a mutually beneficial one, with each party having responsibilities, obligations, and privileges. The landlord has the obligation of making sure that his property is in a tenantable condition. That means all the facilities that are supposed to be there are in place and in good condition.
The high cost of building materials and maintenance is another story to tell. Some landlords narrate their plight.
Rent is going up so much. Why is this so? Number one, you go to the cost of materials. For a new building, cost of cement, which is over 5,000, going to 6,000. One rod can be over 10,000 naira, depending on the size. Ideally, the landlord cannot expect to make any gain until at least 5 years after a house is built. That means you will not put the rent so high that it is unattainable by a prospective tenant.
You have to consider that cost of getting a land in Port Harcourt, the developed area, is very, very expensive. So when you acquire this land, you know the building materials too is also expensive, but you will look at what is obtainable in that area. Also consider the cost of building that house. So those are the things you consider before putting up the price of your house.
The arbitrary increase in rent in recent times really calls for worry. It is imperative that a balance should be struck by key players, including the government, to address the issue.
That we're just coming from Rivers State now. You know, it's like every state has their own peculiar, unique issue. We just heard something that was quite funny, Patience. You know, someone was saying that if the landlord is passing by and he sees that you have frying chicken or cooking fried rice, it seems like he's inspired to bring about financial change. But I know that's not really how it is. We'll continue our conversation. We'll join NTA Abuja. And this is what they are talking about. Real estate. Is there a boom there? And who is it impacting? Is it for good or for nay? Let's find out.
The real estate sector has experienced remarkable growth and development in recent years, fueled by factors such as population growth, urbanization, and rising demand for housing. Despite notable achievements, the sector still grapples with challenges that must be addressed for sustainable growth and improved investor confidence.
The way it is now is not sustainable. There are so many landlords that no longer see real estate as, especially when it comes to rent, as, as an investment. They just buy, build, and sell to avoid the headache of chasing tenants for rent. So in itself is not helping. And so today you see a lot of properties that are springing up everywhere, not for people who can easily afford rent, but for people who are looking forward to buying. A landlord has said it before to me. He said, if I am sure of getting it every month, then I can plan, with it. But where I'm not sure of even getting it annually, and then you're saying monthly, how will I plan? Most of these materials are imported. Okay, so you see how cement went from less than 1,000 to maybe 5,000, and then a particular organization brought it down to 3,500 and maybe trying to. So at the end of the day, it affects the total price of putting that structure up. If it's a property you'd have finished with, let's say 15 million, for instance, and then now you're spending 35, 40 million, how much will you charge as rent? But at the end of the day, the tenants are still unable to pay. So when you see new properties being developed every day, the price will go up. And immediately the price of those new properties go up, the price of the old ones will follow. We can't be in the same neighborhood. Because I built a new 3-bedroom flat and I'm putting it out for 3.5 million. You have your 3-bedroom flat for 1.5 million. The next year I will increase my rent. If you're not ready to pay, move out.
One of the key trends in Nigeria's real estate development market is the increasing popularity of gated communities and luxury estates, which appeal to the growing middle class and catering for diverse needs of only the rich and affluent.
Real estate developers cater for a particular segment of the market. But again, it's not their job. They are in business. Okay, I'm not talking for them, but they're in business. So you have to look at where you make the most profit. All right, and that's why mortgage would have helped a lot, where government can help finance these projects and then allow citizens to pay over a period of time. So real estate developers who maybe went to a bank to get 5 billion to develop a certain estate will not tell stories to the bank, and they are not building to rent. They can build it, sell it, and then let the person who bought it rent it out. So they will look out for where they can make the most profit. And the people who can pay are those who have the money. And so they will build something that their target market will be able to buy. And then sometimes they also create flexible payment options for those set of people. So if you can't buy at once, we can give you 6 months to buy. We can give you 1 year to buy. But you won't find that with civil servants or the general public. They don't have that capacity. So when you drive around Abuja, you see a lot of estates. You see empty properties developed, but buyers. Then you see a lot of people who are willing to sell properties, but you don't really have buyers. I won't spend 50 million, 100 million developing a property and you expect me to sell at 80. Who is bridging the gap? The real estate market is open to the poor and the rich as we speak currently because there are certain schemes made to make the poor now or the low-income earners get a building to themselves. So we have the Federal Mortgage Bank too coming in to see that, okay, they create a particular scheme for people to have their own buildings, probably the low-income earners, as against, of course, the bourgeoisies who can just come and buy outrightly or pay for a building. So, but the low-income earners too gets these positives too, as we speak, because they tend to have this particular scheme made for them, and then there's a particular period of a mortgage they get so that they can acquire a property. So these things are looked into. The low-income earners, the middle-income earners too, all are being infused now into the real estate scene.
Rent have increased by between 25% and 40% in largely populated cities like Lagos, Abuja, Kano, and Port Harcourt, where the like have risen to about 50% in certain locations in the last 3 years. For example, a duplex of 4-bedroom that was let out for 4 million naira to 4.5 million naira now go for between 6 million naira and 7 million naira yearly.
Okay. The real estate market continues to boom, and we pray that we are part of this boom. The conversation is heating up as our live guests are in the house. Yes, they are here. We have 2 guests in the house, but I will be introducing the first one, who is Adefolarin Olamilekan. He is a political economist. Let's meet our guest virtually.
Amazing that. We have another guest. He is Femi Adewale. And it just sounds ordinary. But when I got into what comprises or encapsulates this man, you'd not want to miss this interview. Let's get to see him virtually, just like Patience said.
All right, so I would throw my first question to Architect Adewale. Yes, you're an architect. So for somebody who has played in the real estate sector and beyond the shores of Nigeria, and most times you hear that, like in Nairobi, a place like Kenya, they are getting it right. Nigeria, we are still grappling in the dark as far as housing is concerned, and you keep hearing of huge housing deficit, and there's so many efforts. What exactly is the problem?
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me. the fact is there are no easy answers to your question. For more than 60 years, pretty much every government has had an attempt at resolving our housing issues. And that's because there are a whole layer of challenges. We have challenges with regulatory environment. So we have our famous land use decree, which in terms of how it's implemented, we have issues with capacity. Our developers are still quite small. We have issues with financing. There's very limited long-term financing to support housing. The fact also that 80% of what goes into making a house in Nigeria is imported also means that is a barrier to housing development. So we have a whole range of issues. And I think part of the biggest mistake we've made over the years is to think that there's one single thing we can do to solve the problem. I think that the current government, perhaps for the first time, is looking at a more holistic arrangement that ensures that we can tackle each of those key problems. And I think that if that approach is successful, we probably might have a breakthrough.
Okay.
It's important that we do this, if I can just say this. For most of us here, in 20 years' time, Nigeria's population will be 400 million people. That's twice the size of what we are today.
In 20 years.
Absolutely.
20 years.
Which means that all of our big cities, Abuja, Lagos, Kano, will be totally unrecognizable. Cities like Lagos and Kano will become some of the largest cities in the world. Okay? So we must crack the housing problem. Otherwise, there are a lot of social spin-offs that will come out of it just because of the rate at which we are growing.
Amazing. You know, we ask you to break down the terminologies to layman's language so that everyone will understand. Yesterday, one of our features showed a family on the streets.
Yes.
And that's just one case. There are many. And with what we're experiencing now, inflation, no jobs, people are unable to upskill, they say there's no finance and all of that. It may occur more often than we would like in the nearest future, especially with what he just said, 20 years, 200 million.
And that's true, yeah.
Yesterday, we're talking about mortgage. We do know that that requires some level of foresight and some risk-taking. Where are we with that in Nigeria, and how come it's not making the requisite impact on many of us?
I think practically for me, when it comes to mortgage, I think the policy are there for us to implement mortgage. But the challenge has always been how to ensure that it gets down from the top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top. What I mean is this. When government bring out policy like mortgage policy, like the Federal Mortgage Bank, the Federal Housing Authority, and state also does that domestically on their own. Who are the capture areas? Who are the capture family is this mortgaging targeting? Most times we see that it is just civil servant or public servant that this mortgage facilities target. So how come that the other population in the system are not captured? That is where the problem started. So when Mr. Adebayo was talking about we have gotten it right a little, we have not gotten it right a little, it means that the policy is not yet getting an effect or getting to the link aspect of our society. He also made mention that our population will be 400 million in 20 years' time. It could even be more than that if the right policy are not being practicalized domestically and down to the downstream. Because the problem we have in Nigeria is this. I was watching as the real estate experts were talking about we have a target aspect market. How come we are always having a target market? We are leaving the bottom aspect of the society out of the market because of the finances that Mr. Adebayo pointed out. But for me, the mortgaging system, we borrow some of those policies from abroad. In the US, in the UK, and all the developing countries, they try what they call project housing. And that is the forefront of mortgaging. So how come that we never translate that into the Nigerian system? Although the Lagos state government tried, we have heard about the Jakonde estate, you have heard about FHA estate in Victoria Island and the rest of them, and Ikoyi, Aja, and the rest of them that are coming up. Those estates started for the low-income earners.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden right now, it is not for them. It has now gotten to the upper-income earners, even higher than that. So if our mortgaging system doesn't target the lower-income earners or the people we consider as ordinary Nigerians, there is no way that such policy or that mortgage system work. And you know, when you talk about mortgaging, it talks about a pool of money that can be used for the general housing problem or solving the problem of housing across board.
Okay, see, I still want us to talk about this mortgage issue. Mr. Adewale, why is mortgage not working in Nigeria? What do you think?
Okay, so that's probably a simple one.
Okay.
Mortgages are not working in Nigeria and probably will not work in Nigeria for a long time just because of the makeup of how our society is organized. 70% of our population are on very low income, which means that they are very unlikely, without some help from governments, and we're talking about cash help, to afford a mortgage. We are also in an informal economy. So the way that mortgages are organized, like Mr. Olamilekon said, these are imported concepts. It means that if you walk into a bank today and you want to get a mortgage, one of the first things they will ask from you is, where is your pay slip? So if you're a market woman, you may have a lot of money, but you can't access mortgages because you don't have a salary slip. These are typical things with how mortgages are structured. Okay, so we need to have an alternative that ensures that people can have a home, not necessarily a mortgage.
Okay.
We also have to take account of the fact that 70% of our population, our people, are young people who are mobile. They are moving around. They are just starting their careers. There's a sense in which a mortgage ties you down. They don't want to be tied down. So for those of us in the business, we are beginning to think about how about rental housing that you can rent. When you are finished with it, you move to another place and rent, and that rent is affordable to you. I like what Mr. Olamilekon talked about social, what we call social housing, so we call projects.
Yes.
In an economy like ours, it's absolutely critical that we focus on a social housing program. There is a cost to a house, and that's what people earn. Most of our people don't earn enough to meet the cost of the house. So there is a gap. So we call that the funding gap. And governments through social housing comes to bridge that gap. That is how you connect homes to people, particularly on the low income
side.
Well, it's interesting to note that as we're talking, we've not even gone 10 minutes into our conversation and we're already bringing up solutions. So who is not thinking like you are?
Honestly.
Where are we supposed to take these ideas and innovations? But while we ponder on that, let's look at mobile homes. It's also a thing abroad. People are using mobile homes. Talk about young people. They want to be mobile. They want to be flexible and free. What about mobile housing? If you are living in Abuja today, going to Nasarawa State, you move with your mobility on tires, your home on wheels.
Exactly.
Tell me, without work here, is anyone thinking in that direction?
I think practically, I'll use the word practically because it's something that is existing. Mobile homes or mobile housing is quite very interesting. But we must think about the culture of the people first, because over there in abroad, it's like part and parcel of their culture. If you watch some Western movies, you see them with their vehicle, with that particular mobile housing in a little, like a desert area or an isolated areas, and you see them, they have everything to themselves. But in our own case, talk about good roads, talk about the locality you are going to park that vehicle, talk about the security in that area. You also talk about the fueling, because part of the challenges of what we encounter if we introduce this kind of thing is the fueling. Then the acceptability of our people that you are living in a car. How come a car is your house? Because that's the first thing they will tell you. So the culture has to be settled in that regard. Then we also need to look at the policy of the government. Does the government think in this way towards this kind of alternatives? Like Mr. Adebayo talked about the young people who can move from Abuja to Lagos. Next time you see them in Port Harcourt. If these guys take up these ideas, will you not turn around and begin to cause another social ifs in the society? Because we also need to look at the implication of such social, mobile housing that we are talking about. Because in the Western world, you discover that most people that are engaged in those social, mobile housing, the government, in as much as they accepted them into verticalizing, they also look at the security implication of such a mobile housing that we're talking about.
It is, but just a minute before, I know Patience, you want to say something. You said 20 years 200 million people. There's hardly any innovation that will bring to the fore now that will not come up with its own challenges.
Definitely.
Nothing good will come easy. I don't think it's something that we can just throw aside and discountenance. But we need to bring up innovative ideas and do it very quickly.
Right.
20 years is just 2 decades.
Yes, yeah, just 2 decades, all right. Okay, I was going to also ask a question. Could a part of our problem be the fact that in other climes, we hear of people of means living outside of the town, white picket houses, let's say somewhere like Maraba Nyanya, that's where the big men would want to live because they don't want the noise in the city. And then the young men and the people who don't have so much money would live within the town. Could that be part of our problem? Here, everybody wants to live in the city center. And then so could that be part of our problem?
Yes, it is part of our, so this is what I said, these are very complex issues. It's part of our problem because that speaks to the planning of our cities. So the reason why people of means may not want to live in Yaya is because there's no traffic or transport infrastructure. So in the countries that you talk about, so if you live in England, you can walk in the city and live 40 miles away because you jump on a very comfortable train and in 30 minutes you are at your doorstep. If you do that in Nigeria, you spend 4 hours traveling from Yaya into the city, so it's not practical. So they live in the center. So yes, it's an option for us, but it speaks to how do we plan our cities to ensure that people can live outside and come in, which was incidentally the way Abuja was originally designed, but we have really not implemented it. But if I can just to speak to the issue about innovation, one of the issues is in Nigeria, we still design our houses today the way we designed them when I left architecture school almost 35 years ago. Okay, so nothing has changed. And I tell people, look at a Peugeot 504 that was made in 1984 and look at it today. Every other industry has innovated, they've moved on. But housing really hasn't moved on. We still build with the same kind of blocks that we were building with in the 1950s. Nothing has changed. So if we are going to confront this social tsunami that is coming at us, we must innovate. And part of that innovation is considering every option.
Every option.
If it's mobile homes, if we tried to introduce brick homes, people didn't want it. There was no innovation around that. We still have a situation where even people on low income, they want to live in a house where all the rooms are en suite.
Interesting. They like comfort.
They like comfort. I mean,
young people don't like any form of discomfort.
Keeping up with the Joneses is part of it too.
They are the Jones, so they are the Joneses
of the Joneses of themselves.
There was some time, before we go on a break, there was some time somewhere we heard something about going back to the earth.
Yes.
That we should build now, reduce the use of cement and blocks and go back to earth. But we'll talk about that when we return from this break. A break comes. We must take it.
Okay, welcome back. If you're just joining us, it is Weekend Deal, and our focus today is on the rent, the housing subsector, coming from the angle of the rent, and our guests are still here. So, Mr. Adewale, given all we're going through, what can we do to make rent? I'm looking for the right word to use, to make rent affordable. Because it keeps going up and it keeps going up, and people are crying, especially for the low-income earners.
Oh, no, Nigeria, what goes up hardly ever comes down.
This one can come down.
Can it? Okay, let's hear you. Let's hear you.
Okay, look, first is that, people say that where there is a will, there's always a way, okay? It must come down. Currently, people on low income are spending as much as 65% of their income on rent. So apart from distorting and putting stress on families and individuals, their emotional health is also affecting the economy, because that means they have very little money to spend in the economy. So we have to solve this problem. So the question you ask is, how do we solve it? I think we need to do 3 things. First is that we must dramatically increase the supply of new housing, particularly housing that's targeted at people on low income. The last government started it, I'm happy that the current government is intent on continuing it. We must sustain a program of large-scale provision of housing for people on low income. The issue of rent increases is at heart, an issue of supply and demand. Okay? So this was for my first. The second one, I want to take the opportunity to also say that our institutions, and here I talk our religious institutions, our churches, our mosques, need to find a role for themselves in providing subsidized housing for people on low income. In very many societies of the world, for example, in England, a significant proportion of low-income housing was originally established by churches. We must do that. Some of our big Muslim and Christian denominations have the financial muscle. This is a national problem. It's not a government
problem. They're building universities and schools,
Absolutely.
They should also go into housing.
Because a lot of their members are victims of this issue. Okay, so that's my second bit. The third thing that we can do, and we can do quickly, is that for more than 30 years, we have not looked at what we call the landlord and tenant legislation in Nigeria. So that is why a landlord can wake up one day for no reason and jack up the rent. In the same way, the tenants can choose that they are not going to pay the rent and sit tight in the house. Those kind of behaviors on both sides distort the market, they increase the risk. And in doing that, anywhere risk goes up, prices go up. So we must go back and look at our Landlord and Tenants Acts and ensure that we have a regulatory an environment whereby the tenants have a right, but also the landlord has a right that is transparent between those parts. And one of the things I would like to see, Lagos State tried it, but it wasn't enforced. We must stop this idea of people paying 1 year's, 2 years rent in advance.
Oh, goodness.
I worked, by God's grace, so far in 44 African countries. This is unique to Nigeria.
Wow.
Is unique to Nigeria. This must be legislated out, but it will only happen if landlords are given some protection. The reason landlords are asking for 1 year, 2 years in advance, because they are sure, they're not sure whether this person will keep paying month by month.
For a long period of time. Wow.
So to protect and ensure themselves. So to support landlords, we can set up things like rental insurance, whereby there are insurance policies that allows landlords, if the tenant doesn't pay, covers their cost. And the tenant, as part of their rent, pays the premium for that insurance.
Amazing.
Interesting.
Okay, so we need to put these things in place. The last bit I will say is that, look, even people on low income are contributing in these days to pensions and things like that. We must force our pension funds to invest in housing. They can't take people's money and put it where it doesn't benefit people.
Benefit them in the long run. We have housing fund, we have pension fund. So in a way, on paper, middle income earners are successful on paper. But in the practical way, we have little or nothing to show. Because oftentimes to access these funds, like we said yesterday, is a bureaucratic
bottleneck. You don't want to go there.
It's a journey into the unknown, and it does seem as though some people deliberately don't want to furnish that person with all the information they need to succeed.
Assess.
The reason I gave the data I gave about our increasing population is not to scare people. It's just to say that we are facing something that we've never seen before.
We called it a tsunami.
Absolutely. And therefore, we must do things that we've never done before.
To get different
we must take risks.
Yes.
We must.
We must take some things that look crazy.
Yes.
Because we are facing a crazy situation. Otherwise, we will not solve it.
Indeed. crazy and risky innovations, but with some foresight, we bring it to the fore. And Nigeria can do it. We've done greatness is in our DNA.
Yes.
Isn't that what we often say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Sufyan's report is ready now.
Yes, okay,
Patient.
so let's see what's happening in other climes. We've been talking within the shores of Nigeria. Let's take a trip outside of Nigeria and see exactly what the situation is.
One of the targets of Goal 11 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is to ensure adequate, safe, and affordable housing and basic services for all by the year 2030. October 2023 report by the United Nations reveals that an estimated 100 million people globally do not have a home, and that global population will continue to increase, indicating that housing crisis is likely to remain an issue.
From a global perspective, the issue of housing insufficiency is universal. We have it in Nigeria. In the UK at the moment, they're also having that same kind of problem. There are not enough houses to either buy or to rent. Same as well in the US. Not to talk about the global financial breakdowns and recessions in most of the economies from the COVID period even till now.
Demand for housing across the world supersedes supply, increasing prices in housing purchase and rental. Reports show that rentals across all types of housing units in Europe have sharply risen by 14.5% in the first quarter of 2023. The story is similar in virtually all parts of the world, with developing countries like Nigeria also hard hit. People living in major cities like Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Benin City, Kano, and Jos spend more than half of their incomes on housing costs.
The increment in rent is as a result of the increment in prices of everything in the market. And it has everything to do with both the micro and macro economics of the country. So it's true that, yes, people are struggling to make affordable accommodation with the limited resources they have.
All this thing is caused by increment of fuel price. You know, the hike in fuel price affects almost everything, not only in tenancy rate, it affects foodstuffs, it affects everything, transport fare.
Yeah, everybody, the economic problem that is happening today, the landlords are involved, the people are involved. So we are in between, but the people that are within the rent are still the ones suffering it.
What are the tested and successful strategies that have helped low-income earners in other parts of the world cope with housing challenges that can be applied to the Nigerian situation?
Yes, one of those ways we can handle that in Nigeria, we can borrow from the United Kingdom. They have council flats. Council flats are flats which is given to low-income earners, those who can afford expensive places. They pay little and occupy houses within the city center. But the thing is, for that to work, they have a very good database. With the database, they can easily tell who is earning lower and who is earning higher, so that the wrong people don't occupy such flats. So if they can apply it here in Nigeria, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Another area is like the JV, joint venture projects. They do that in Rwanda, lots. Rwanda is now going into full tourism, and the world is tapping into that. So the Rwandan government teamed up with experts. People came in and built high-rise buildings to accommodate people, because there's massive influx of people into Rwanda now because of tourism. It wouldn't be a bad idea too if we apply the same system here in Nigeria, whereby joint ventures are encouraged so that people can have more housing units to occupy. And then another area is interest rates. Interest rates in Nigeria is very high for mortgage. For people to take loans to buy houses, the rates are very high. In the United States of America, They have subsidized rates. The government puts in their own bits and reduces the rates so that people can afford to build and occupy houses in the US. If that's applied in Nigeria, it's also a very good one.
Experts say by adopting and implementing innovative solutions, the challenges of housing affordability can be a thing of the past in Nigeria.
Okay, we do see that if we were to bring the facts to the table as we are learning them, time is not on our side in terms of providing adequate housing for the Nigerians who are already here, let alone what will happen in 5 years if we are slow on the take. We do realize, talking about real estate, housing, and people, we must be proactive. We must be willing to take innovative risks, and we must start now. Messages are coming in for our experts to tackle, so let me take a few of them. Omeza is reaching us from Abuja, from Apple. It says, there's a serious issue on ground now. Landlords, many of them who don't work, want to make all their earnings from their tenants. That's where they throw consideration out of the window. They increase rent without any renovation to the existing property. If we are not careful, very soon, low-income earners, you can also add middle-income earners, will flog our streets. We said it here, but we know it's not going to happen.
Who says it?
No, it's not, because Nigeria is a great country with progressive people at the top.
We must do something, Thelma.
Okay. The government, okay, this is coming from Ayo, from Akure. It says, is the government budgeting for housing? Does the Ministry for Housing have adequate budget? That's assuming that they're even thinking the way you guys are thinking this morning. Are they constructing enough housing units? In the last 10 years, I've hardly noticed much happening. Or am I not seeing the progress being made? Ayo from Akure. I'll just take one more. Bimbo Fawale is from Osun State. She says, everyone needs to be comfortable. But we're not asking for comfort now. We're asking for shelter. Just give us shelter. These policies that government is creating all the time, is it taking the low-income earners into consideration? All these funds we're talking about, housing fund, mortgage financing, who accesses it and when? They said the government needs to do more. The banks need to do more. And we need to have more access to loan facilities. Bimbo Fawale is reaching us from Osun State. Okay, so tackle one, sir. Okay?
Okay, thank you. No, as I said, look, desperate times require desperate measures. And I think that we're getting to that point now where we need to take desperate measures. Yes, there's some building going on. I headed an institution that built about 15,000 homes over three years. But that's nothing.
That's nothing.
We need to be building close to 1 million houses a year. And we are probably not building 100,000 in total. So what we're doing is simply not enough. And that is the reason why some of your guests can't see it. So we need to do something to scale up housing supply immediately. But that can't come from government alone. It has to come from government. It has to come from civil society. It has to come from, as I said, our religious institution. It has to come from the private sector because we are all affected by this. And pulling together in partnership with the government that provides the enabling environment for that to happen, provide the land, make sure that it's easy to get planning permission and all of that. We can do it, but we must stop doing what we're doing now. People say that the definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. Absolutely.
Well, let me take it from here before we go on.
For me, practically, I'm using the word practically because that's to be experimented practically so that Nigerians can know that actually houses are being built by the federal government. The new Minister of Housing have declared a new national emergency on housing. He hasn't brought about a roadmap, but the key message still remains that this housing roadmap, how many poor Nigerians, how many low-income earners are captured in this policy. If it remains the elite developmental strategy in housing, that means what Mr. Adebayo has said in terms of the problem we are going to face, that means we're going to have it. But for me, I would advise the government, because all we have done on this platform, we have advised them, take it practically and ensure that ordinary Nigerians have a feel of a house or a shelter, not just expensive houses that we normally have, big estate with luxury colors and the rest of it. That's not what Nigerians are asking for. At least something that can take them in a way from basic accommodation.
Okay. Yesterday, when we were also talking with our guests, we talked about big houses that are empty.
Exactly. I was going to go.
And someone was saying, how can those homeowners be compelled to house people in their homes? Any ideas?
Good. So many countries have this legislation. It's an empty home strategy that says, look, if you have a 6-10 bedroom house in Maitama and you are not living there, we impose a punitive tax on you that forces you to do something with it. Okay, because it's their personal property, we can't grab it. But you can put things in place that compels them. And when you do that, that releases that home for development. So you can have a 10 bedroom, of which we have many of them. You know, Maitama is about 30% empty. Okay, that can be converted into small apartments for young people. But as you know, practically a lot of things has to change. Today, if I want to convert a big house in Maitama into 6 flats, the planning department will tell me I have to provide 12 parking spaces. But the young people don't have, or 12 cars. Okay, so what other countries have done is to understand that when houses are located in the central town, you don't need that much parking space. So it makes it easier to convert those houses into accommodation. That is another way, a quick way actually, of increasing supply. We have a lot of empty properties in Abuja that are not being used. On the other hand, we have people building outside of town to live in. We must solve that problem. And part of that is saying that actually if you have a property and it's empty, we're going to make it cost you a lot of money. We're going to make it cost you a lot of money so that you would then find that you have no option but to put it back into use.
Okay.
I think if I will add to what Mr. Adebayo said, there's an agency of government, National Building Research and Development Agencies. They need to come in here. When we talk about imported materials, this is where these agencies as a research needs to come in to reduce the importation of some building materials so that we can have affordable and accessible housings for Nigeria.
We need to wrap up our conversation here. As interesting, as it is, and the messages are coming in. I have over 30, 40, 50 here. Many of them are talking about landlords bringing sentiment and empathy to the table. But we discussed yesterday that empathy cannot give the landlords or homeowners some financial reward. We are wrapping up our conversation. One phrase.
Yes. One phrase, let's solve the root problem. Let's get more houses into the market.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And for me, let the government match its word with practicality.
I like that.
Thank you so much. And this is where we draw the curtain. Thank you. We sign you off, Mr. Femi Adewale.
Thank you very much.
You have been amazing. And your antecedent speaks volumes here. Okay, Patience, sign off. My friend.
So thank you so much. You've been very practical. You've been about practical. Exactly. And I'm praying that the right authorities are hearing you and we get the practical on. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, it's Weekend Deal. We've been talking about indiscriminate hikes in rents in Nigeria, and it's a nationwide challenge. A break beckons. We'll be back. Don't go anywhere.
Thelma, do you have some messages there?
Yes, a few. There's one pertinent one I think we should bring to the fore. Someone is saying here that, yes, government should do a bit, but more Nigerians too needs to get into the heart of the matter. He goes on, Laddie says that it's not an excuse to say you don't understand what it means to get a mortgage. If it's important to you, find out what it takes.
True.
Do your research. And if it has worked for others, it can work for you. People are saying it's about connection. Yes, there's connection in some areas, but you can get your mortgage if you really want it. And he goes on to say that landlords should have a heart and should not increase their rent indiscriminately, because at one time, some of them too rented property from
tenants,
other
it's-
landlords as well. Okay.
Any other
There are many
ones?
more, but I think we'll just, let's just rest with that one.
Okay. Okay, so if you don't take anything away at all today, just remember that the rental agreement, you see, I'm still on that rental agreement because it is a lifesaver. Insist. No matter how, I'm still talking about the font because it discouraged me at one point. Read it. The rental renewal clause, insist on it. Let it be there. It could be your lifesaver. You understand?
And if
Please.
your landlord contravenes it, you know you can speak
you have
out.
something to speak out with. You understand? So you need to, take it seriously and study it.
And it's our hope that government at all levels are listening to our conversation and doing their due diligence. We've come to learn that we must take risk, we must be proactive, because in the next 20 years, we could easily be double the number
It's
that
not going
we
to be a
are now.
walk in the park.
Yes,
and
indeed.
of course, for the landlords, let's have a human face.
Yes.
I do know that it's your house, it's a business investment, but you never can tell. Let's tread with love and human angle to it all.
Yes. God bless Nigeria. We are always stronger and better
Together.